Welcome
to the joy of coding.
Hello, and welcome to episode 146 of The Joy of Coding. My name's Mike Conley. Hey, I'm back. It's been a couple weeks. I was away. I was traveling. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. Hopefully you found some interesting things to watch while I was gone. But I'm back now. I was traveling in Ireland and England and Scotland, and I saw a lot of castles and interesting things. But I'm back now, and let's just get into it. Where are we? What's going on? Here's my screen. So, it's episode 146. A reminder: no plan survives breakfast. It's been a little while since I've done this stream. It's been like I said, a couple of weeks, so I'm probably not going to be able to do the full hour and a half like I'm used to, or like I normally do. That's because, believe it or not, live streaming takes a lot of energy. There's a lot of I don't know, it takes something out of me, and I have a feeling my stamina won't exactly be up to snuff. It'll probably take me a couple of weeks to build back up to what I was able to do, but that's okay. No plan survives breakfast. Things can go wrong. I might end early. That's okay. So I'm just going to lay that out right now. If things go wrong during the stream, that's okay. It's been a couple of weeks for me. Preamble done. So that's one thing. Second thing is there's this agenda that we're looking at. So this agenda, with all these fancy links that you can click on, is something that you have access to. Depending on where you're watching, it's going to be in a different place. So if you're watching this on YouTube, for example, it's in the video description. If you're watching this on Air Mozilla 2, it's in the handouts section. That's the newest Air Mozilla. If you're watching this on the old Air Mozilla, which you shouldn't be anymore, but if you happen to be, it's in the additional links section down below. And if you're watching this on Twitch, well, there is a Twitch chat, and I will drop the link into the Twitch chat right now. Boom, there's the agenda. There's also a link to rate the episode. After the episode's done, let me know what you thought. I read every single rating that comes in. Helps me shape the series to make sure that it's delivering what you need. So rate this episode. I'll put that link into the Twitch chat as well. That link is also available in all the same places that I just mentioned, and it's right here in the agenda. I really want you to click on it. Plus, inside there, I took a fun picture of myself, using this webcam thing, this WebRTC webcam thing, and it's got all cool colors and stuff. So that's a little bit of motivation to fill in the form after the episode, is to check out my cool photo. So there's also an episode guide. The episode guide for The Joy of Coding is completely viewer-driven. This is something that started up, I don't remember, but it's got I think pretty much every episode is in there. There are some that are missing. Usually that's because the episodes themselves are not available. Either they weren't filmed and we just skipped a number, or I guess the recordings aren't available. But we're all the way up to the last episode, 145, and there'll be things like topics that I cover and things that I wanted to do, and links and links to the video itself and the agenda. So you should check these out. If the episode guide is something that you think you would like to check out, there's a link in the agenda. Also, if you have your own notes, things that you want to add yourself to the episode guide, that's okay too. Like I said, it's viewer driven. So if there's stuff you want to add, your own notes, maybe some corrections, additional links, maybe you want to expand on something that we were talking about, send me a pull request to the repository, because the episode guide is hosted on GitHub. And if you're not sure what I mean by that, in the agenda here, I have links to both how to create pull requests, like what they are, also a link to the repository. Once you figure out what pull requests are, you can then send pull requests to the repository. And if you want a guide, just a straightforward guide on how to create pull requests, SmurfD recommends this one. So you can check that link out. I'm gonna skip over ad zone. I'm just gonna go and make sure everything is working, and we'll get started. So quick sound check here. You can hear that. I am recording. Yep. Okay. I want to give a couple quick shout outs before I begin. First of all, I want to shout out to Les Orchard, who's been hacking on Firefox Color. He's getting his stream up and going. Firefox Color, if you're not familiar with it, is this really excellent tool. if you go to color.firefox.com, it's actually a test pilot experiment, so I should start there. If you go to testpilot.firefox.com and find the color experiment and enable it, then when you go to color.firefox.com, you can like quickly and easily change the colors of your browser. So if you'll notice, my browser is mostly blue and white, and there are a bunch of like built-in ones that you can use instead, like that one or this dark one or this kind of funky one. And once you have a selection, once you have one that you like, you can share it. So for example, if you like the theme I'm currently using, you can use this link to get it for yourself. So I'm actually going to put that link in the agenda. So a link to my theme. So there you go. If you have Firefox Color and you want this blue look, which I believe one of my colleagues, Chutton, designed, then you can check that out. And so Les Orchard works on Firefox Color, and he's got his Twitch channel set up here, and he's got a bunch of videos now hacking on Firefox Color, and you should definitely check it out. He does this pretty regularly. Like, he's only got 2 days in between here and here, 5 days in between here and here. So I don't think he's got like a regular streaming schedule. I think he's still trying to get that figured out, but he's definitely doing some interesting stuff, and you should check it out. I believe, I'm not entirely certain, but I believe the UI is written using React. So if that is a thing that interests you, you should definitely check it out. Let me see if I can find some proof of that. Yeah, I think I found some proof that there's some React in here. So if React is a thing that you care about, you should probably check out Les's stream. Similarly, there's another colleague, Josh Marinacci, hopefully I've pronounced that correctly, who is hacking on Firefox Reality, the VR browser that Mozilla is tinkering around with. It's our sort of our emerging technologies group. Hang on, Firefox Reality. If I go to Firefox Reality, you can go to the Mixed Reality homepage and find links to the stuff we're doing here. Hang on a second. Is this? I don't think this is exactly right. Not that web page. What you want is like, yeah, this is the GitHub page, Firefox Reality, and I guess that was the right page. But where does it make reference to Firefox Reality? Because Firefox Reality is like a separate browser product. They also have a Twitter account, but I think there was a blog post. Maybe I'll find you the blog post. This one's pretty recent, April 10th. This one's talking about the design of Firefox Reality. And the Firefox Reality, like the emerging tech group, has this really excellent like set of updates that they do, like the weekly, This Week in Mixed Reality, issue 14 is what's going on. Josh actually wrote that one. They talk about the very stuff. And like here's a video of Josh, the fellow who's streaming this stuff, actually demonstrating the browser. I'm just going to mute it, but you can maybe we can take a quick look and see what it looks like. I don't know why that play button won't go away. That seems like a YouTube bug. But, he's testing out a browser, I think, a browser application here. I'm not entirely certain, but this must be like the web browser. And so now we're thinking about web browsers in like VR space. It's a whole new world. So anyway, if all of that if any of that interests you, you should check out Josh Marinacci's Twitch channel here. He's got a couple of videos posted, and I'm pretty sure he does some live hacking as well. So you should follow him. Okay, so those are my shoutouts. What are we doing today? Oh, there's a question from Beach Jar. Any thoughts on YouTube relying on Shadow DOM VO only integrated in Chrome? This is from BeachJ322. I think so. The question is, I'm assuming he's referring to this thing. There was like this little blow up on the No, not that guy. Jesus. No. Shadow DOM. Yeah, this thing. So Chris Peterson, who's a program manager here at Mozilla, he was noticing that because YouTube uses the old version of Shadow DOM, like the V0 one that never shipped in other browsers, and then they polyfill it because none of the other browsers implemented the V0 version because it was V0 and it hadn't been like agreed upon. Other browsers are being polyfilled for that V0 implementation, including Firefox and Edge. Chrome's not being polyfilled because they implemented the V0 API. And that means that YouTube is loading more slowly because Chrome and Google implemented a non-agreed upon version of the Shadow DOM API. And they're punishing Firefox and Edge, who... We're implementing the V1. I think we've got Shadow DOM V1 in the pipe. I don't know where along it is right now. Shadow DOM. It's enabled in nightly apparently. Let's see here. It's been enabled in nightly since 62, and let me see if I can find more information. As of this moment, is still only enabled in nightly. So it's enabled in nightly, and hopefully will be stabilized and sent up the train soon. But until then, when you go to YouTube, you get polyfilled. And even when we do ship it, we're going to get polyfilled. Because even when we ship the proper version, I guess this is like V1 or V2 of Shadow DOM. Do we say whether it's V1 or V2? I guess it doesn't really matter. But we're still going to get polyfilled because we don't implement V0. And no one's going to implement V0. Only Chrome has implemented V0. So this is, in my opinion, some pretty crappy behavior. I think probably what YouTube needs to do is upgrade. They need to upgrade the version of Polymer to be polyfilling the V1 or the later versions of the Shadow DOM API, the standardized versions of the Shadow DOM API that all the browsers have implemented. And if they're dragging their feet, they're hurting the web. Because YouTube is not some small property. That's a pretty popular website. And so I think, are they intentionally dragging their feet? I don't know. But this isn't the first time Google's done something like this. Like Google Hangouts only now works properly in Firefox, and that took years. They certainly don't prioritize the other browsers. Let's say that, and that I think hurts the web. It hurts competition. It's so. Those are my thoughts on YouTube relying on Shadow DOM V0 only integrated in Chrome. I think it hurts the web, and I think Google should be ashamed of themselves. I like the people on the Chrome team. I work with people on the Chrome team. They're good people, but there are people at Google who make decisions on things that affect the web like this that I don't think they're making the decisions in the thinking of the web. I think they're thinking of Google only and not thinking about the web. And that's a real shame. Another example is Google Earth, I think, still is only Chrome only, and it shipped Chrome only, that's just bad for the web. So those are my thoughts. Hopefully that answers your question, BeachJ322. I should point out that those are my opinions. I am just a person on the internet. Don't assume that those are Mozilla's opinions. I'm just a person who works for Mozilla. My opinions are my own. These are my views. I hope that goes without saying. So hopefully that answers that question. I also saw a wave from Les Orchard, who's apparently watching. So hello, Les. Good to see you. All right, what are we doing today? I want to review some patches. There are a couple things in flight that that have been added to my review queue since I was away, or actually I turned off patches being put in my review queue while I was away. But once I reopened it, a flood of patches came in, and now I'm dealing with that. And I can't say I didn't ask for it. Some of them I actually asked for, and I want to review some patches. So let's look at a couple. The first one comes from Chris Maglione. It's bug 148022. sorry, no, that's wrong. 1480244. Get rid of message manager globals. Okay. So this is part of an effort to reduce the amount of memory each content process takes. You can tell that because it's blocking a meta bug called memshrink content. What Chris noticed was that message manager globals, and these are things like the global JavaScript, the execution scope within a message manager. So like within a frame script, you have a message manager. And so you have a JavaScript global because you can run script inside that message manager. Those globals, if you get rid of them, you can save about 100K per message manager. And that's not small potatoes. I mean, it's not megabytes, but we're at the point where we're attempting to save kilobytes of memory. And I think later on he says that this ultimately saves closer to 700K, although I'm not entirely certain if that's 700K per content process or 700K on like the Are We Slim Yet benchmark or something. But that is pretty compelling. So he's removing the message manager globals. He's got a whole stack of patches here. He got BZ to review some stuff. I want to go through these patches just to get a quick sense of what he's doing. And then we'll take a look. Part 5 is the thing that he's asked me to review. And if we quickly take a look at that, what I notice is that, well, first of all, we can read the commit message here. Creating non-shared scopes for frame scripts is fairly expensive. After these changes, it's even more expensive. However, many frame scripts have no use for the shared scopes at all. Run one scripts, which execute enclosures, for instance, make no use of them, and after bug 1472491, neither do most of our default frame scripts. And then he ends up adding this new argument, or adding another argument to a bunch of places where we call load frame script. And that argument, I found out recently, is this run in global scope, which is false by default. And is there a comment here? Not really. Let's go. I wanna know more about this run in global scope thing. So hold on a second. I'm gonna go back in time a little bit. We're gonna look at the bug where they moved this code. This was not that long ago. No, not there. I'm just gonna open a bunch of these up. Load frame script. Or message manager dot web IDL. No, okay. Message manager. Load frame script. I'm just looking for like the places where this might be it. Yeah, here we go. He must have removed it from somewhere, right? Run global scope. So maybe I can work from here if we find this function. I want to find the point where run in global scope was first introduced. Whoops. So I'm going to show earliest version without that line. Load frame script, run in global scope. Here maybe. I'm going through current existing frame scripts, and as they all run the same JS context, they end up polluting the scope with their functions and fighting for who defines CI/CD first. This wraps script in an honest function to make sure that the object we want to expose is added. And then Bill wrote this patch where he added run in global scope. So I guess what it does is, if in the event that this is false, which is false by default, then it doesn't run in the global scope. It runs in like some kind of a private scope, non-shared scopes, and apparently that's fairly expensive. That's the expensive thing. And after the changes earlier on in these patches, it's even more expensive. Many frame scripts have no use for the shared scopes at all. Run one scripts which execute enclosures, for instance, make no use of them. For non-shared scopes. Okay, so I guess the claim here is that tab content and content.js don't need to run inside private scopes. And I'm reasonably certain that that is true. Although var global equals this, there's going to be a couple of like var x equals 1, var x equals 1. Yeah, I mean, there are going to be a couple places where like the global is defined twice in a row. It's not that big a deal. Like this thing, the tab child global. I don't think that's a big deal though. All right, so let's try and get a quick sense of all that Chris is trying to do here. Oh, Tomato Shadow says, saw your tweet about tab warming coming to Mac OS, or is it already here? Hey, Tomato Shadow. 2. Tab warming has been enabled on Mac OS on Nightly for months now, but it's not ridden the trains. It's been stuck on Nightly, and it hasn't gone to beta. It hasn't gone to release. So if you've had Nightly for the past couple of months, you've had tab warming enabled. But we were waiting on some graphics work in order to let it ride out to release. That graphics work landed a couple weeks ago, and now tab warming is in a state where we feel like it can ride the train. So I landed a pref that will allow it to ride out in the 63 train out to release. So to review, tab warming has been enabled on Nightly only on Mac OS for a couple of months now. And if all goes well, and I don't get backed out, then tab warming should go out to release on Mac OS in version 63. And if you're on Windows or Linux, you've had tab warming enabled on release since 61. That went out in 61. And Beach Jar goes like, yay, tab warming! And I feel the same way. The graphics work that we were depending on has really made things a lot smoother for Mac OS. So if you're on Mac OS and you're on beta or release, good things are coming. The browser's going to start feeling a lot more responsive and smooth starting in version 63. Tomato Shadow says, yeah, wow, completely missed it. Yeah, I use Nightly every day. Any pref I need to turn it on? No, like if you're using Nightly, you've had tab warming and there's nothing you need to do. If you are not on Nightly, then it's off for a reason on Mac OS. There's like there are a couple of, we end up spamming the compositor with too much information whenever we have warming on and you're like hovering the tabs without that graphics work I talked about. So yes, there is a pref to turn it on beta and release for Mac OS in earlier versions, but I wouldn't if I were you. I would continue using Nightly because apparently you use that every day. Hopefully that answers your question. MCIR says, Firefox Nightly from 5 days ago drops stream when tab is not focused. Is there a bug about it? Happens with YouTube and Twitch. Hi, MCIR. I'm not familiar with such a bug. So maybe that's definitely worth filing. Drops stream when a tab is not focused. I wonder if that has something to do with network priority. Maybe something in our networking code is deprioritizing the tab. Is this on Windows? Would be my first question. And the reason I ask that is process prior. I actually think this is turned off, so maybe it doesn't matter. Because turn on, yeah, it doesn't matter if it's Windows or not. The process priority thing didn't actually get turned on. So, never mind my question. Definitely worth filing a bug, MC Ire. And then Tomato Shadow says, thanks very much. Yeah, Nightly has been really smooth for me with 10 content processes. Well, enjoy. We're reducing the memory overhead of those content processes, so hopefully soon you'll be able to have even more. And MCR says, he's running Linux with 2 streams open on 2 screens. Only one is playing, the one that's focused. No, I am not familiar with this bug, but worth filing with that information. Okay, let's see what Chris is up to in these patches. So the first thing he does is he's got something called patch 1A, rename process global to content process message manager. I actually thought that we already had a thing called content process message manager. Yeah, we do, but it is a binding? Oh, that's interesting. Content process message manager is a binding only. And then we have this thing called process global. So we have like content process message manager exists as a concept inside the message manager web IDL file. Like it's this thing that implements the message manager global interface. And it itself has its own interface. That's interesting. And so for some reason we called it process global, and then I think this is mostly cleanup. We're just renaming it to content process message manager. I think that makes a lot of sense. Okay. And then the second patch, he is renaming NSI in process tab child global to in process tab child message manager. I also think that makes sense. I guess because we're getting rid of the globals themselves, we're just talking about message managers. So this is mostly a rename, it sounds like. Let's see if there's any big changes other than that. No, it just looks like a rename to me. All right. And then rename tab child global to tab child message manager. So this is interesting. I like what he's doing here. He's like changing the naming of things before he starts like removing the globals. So he renames stuff. I mean, I guess you could have done that after the fact as well, but this works too. So yeah, he's making sure that the terminology is right inside the code. Like we're renaming things to reflect what will soon be reality. So tab child message manager. So just a big old rename. Nothing too fancy there. And then he has this function or this patch that is still being reviewed. Replace execute in global. Replace execute in global and return scope with execute in scope chain and return new scope. So this patch series replaces message manager globals with ordinary JS objects which live in the shared JSM global. Once that happens, execute in global and return scope will no longer have useful behavior for them since the base global, blah, 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 blah. This is not a thing that I think I am equipped to understand very well. This is more of a JavaScript engine thing and how it interacts with our frame script. So I'm actually going to skip that patch. And then over here, we're fixing non-strict mode test code, which expects this to be bound to the global. A lot of the ad hoc frame scripts we execute for test does not run in strict mode and therefore has its functions this object set to the global when they're called without a target object. This gives them the message manager global. Once message managers become non-global objects, however, we'll give them the shared JSM global, which is not what they expect. This patch changes scripts which rely on this to explicitly capture or set the appropriate this object for their calls. So function. He's converting a bunch of things to arrow functions to get the this properly. So that's how this becomes bound for non-strict mode test code. And then there are a bunch of other things that apparently, with the new loading model for frame scripts, lexical variables defined in a global frame script are not available to other frame scripts. Additionally, scripts loaded into a context object by the subscript loader should not depend on being able to access properties of the message manager as if they were globals. So we load a subscript and then we pass in a scope, this, and then when we use var instead here, I don't know why we do that, but event utils becomes these lazy getters. Turn content.keyboard event. I'm not entirely certain what that is for, but I guess that's not really my problem. There are other people reviewing that stuff. This, I think, is like the series patch. This is the one that makes child message managers non-global objects. And he says this is mostly self-explanatory. Is it? Let's see. Non-global objects. Message managers no longer are global objects. So, like, you have to explicitly bind them. And I'm looking to see how this affects things like some of our frame scripts. What he ends up doing is, right, okay, so this inside of this arrow function ends up being bound to the outer scope. That's how arrow functions work. And I guess we need that because they're like, that's a scoping problem, or it's bound, this is bound to the wrong thing in the new world here. So it's a little strange. It's a little strange, but I think I'm starting to understand what exactly I'm reviewing here. So there are frame scripts that we load that some of them rely on the shared scope, or can run in the shared scope. And the good news about the shared scope is that it's cheaper. Creating these like private scopes is expensive, and apparently, as Chris was saying, because of the patches in the series, they're actually getting more expensive creating those private scopes, non-shared scopes. Many frame scripts have no use for the shared scopes at all. Run once scripts which execute enclosures make no use of them. And after this bug, neither do most of our default frame scripts. So these are the ones that we can put into the shared global. And I'm just going to quickly refresh my memory of what's inside some of these. I know what's inside content and tab content. This one is just an object, just a little stub. It accesses the doc shell. Which is fine. And what's the other one? Oh, this is the same thing, content.js. Then we have one here called extbrowsercontent.js. Couple of consts in here. Browser listener. I guess that could eventually burn us, but as things move more and more into, like, away from the frame scripts into these like actor files, I think that will be less of an issue. Content session store. Yeah, that makes sense. Onboarding. So this seems okay. Seems okay to me. Moving all of these into the global scope. That's fine. What do you do down here? These two. Okay, so yeah, moving these into the global scope seems fine. For this one, we're loading this frame script, and Ace1 noticed that instead of adding a third argument, we changed the second argument. Let's find out what that's all about. Message manager.webidl. Allow delayed load. Yeah, I think I misunderstood Ace1's original comment here, but he brings up a good point. I'm not certain, but in my previous review of the patch, I think, but now I get it, and I have the same question. Is this supposed to now be running in the global scope? If so, we need to add a new argument and not change the delayed load argument. Okay, so I'm actually okay with this set of patches. I'm gonna R+ it, but I'm gonna say hi, thanks for the patch. This looks fine. Although if we weren't moving away from frame scripts, I'd be worried about naming collisions, non-obvious naming collisions. Collisions down the road with all of this these scripts running in the same scope. However, because bug such and such, which was it? Message actor, this one, is going to move us quite far along in eliminating frame scripts and using modules to keep things scoped. I think the actor modules to keep things scoped, I think this is fine as an intermediary step. All right. So that's reviewed. And then the other thing I need to review was Tomato Shadow asks, "Hey Mike, did you make the theme for your Firefox yourself?" No, Chris Hutton made it for me. He was a Mozillian, he works on the data team. Chutton is his IRC nick. Chutton made it and shared it on Twitter. And if you want a copy, it's in the agenda. Check out a link to my theme link here, and that will give you access to these colors, and then you can tweak it however you please. All right, let's see here. Right, the next thing I was going to review were some changes to about crashes. So Alexis Deschamps is an intern who is working on some about crashes changes. I'm not entirely certain what's being changed here though. So here's the original bug, or the tracking bug. About crashes has some issues that we'd like to resolve. It is not clear to users that clicking the crash ID for an unsubmitted crash will submit to Mozilla. The remove all crashes button does not clearly indicate that removing locally stored crashes will not remove the crashes from Socorro. We're considering changing how long crashes are stored locally. This bug is for tracking the planning, design, and implementation process for improving about crashes. Here is the UX design. So it's not super different. It's a little bit different. Here's what we currently have. If we take a look at this. So we have the two sections: unsubmitted, report, date crashed, submitted, report, date submitted. And so that's interesting. They changed from date crashed down here, or date submitted, to date crashed down and submitted. That's interesting. Jacqueline Savory says, attaching a quick mock-up of how about crashes could look. I'm hoping this satisfies most of the major UX problems. Let me know if anything has questions or concerns. You have any thoughts? The mock-up looks rad. I'm looking at giving Lon you gave it +1. Drive-by tracking sounds like a meta bug, so labeling as much to make it a list of unprioritized bug. Will the crash ID still link to crash stats and report? Yes, the functionality should remain the same. As part of the overall, could we also please put the submitted section on top of the page background? Is that in support? We often guide users to this page, but they often miss the part about picking a report starting with BP as they go for the top entries. So that's the thing to keep in mind. This is the, oh, and there was another bug here. About crashes localization, migration from DTD to Fluent, and then the interface update. So what's already in here? There's some conversation. Is this planned to land in 63? I guess it will need localization, maybe some testing. It looks really nice, by the way. And Pascal says, Alexis is going to land during the 63 development cycle. He says, I do believe this will land within the next 2 weeks. So I think that means it could land during the 63 development cycle. And Pascal goes, I don't think that we want to promote this change in our final release notes for end users, but we certainly want to mention it to our nightly release notes since we want our pre-release channel population to file bugs. Will it be a short blog post for saying the changes that we could link to from the release notes? Yes, I could write something. Not sure what the process is for that, though. Please feel free to send me information. Then he attached the patch and says, the About Crashes page's user interface is being updated. Changed crash submission to be done through button press instead of link clicking. This allows users to know they're submitting the crash. Updated visuals to match the new mockup. The mockup image is that one. Added new Fluent strings that are needed for the new user interface and modernized the surrounding code. What are your thoughts on what the confirmation text should be for the clear all buttons? Here's what I currently have for modifying the original text. Clear all confirmation text for unsubmitted reports. This will delete all unsubmitted crash reports and cannot be undone. That's what that looks like. And this one is, this will remove the links to your submitted crash reports and cannot be undone. The submitted data will not be deleted. Also, do you think it would be a good idea to flip the order of the unsubmitted and submitted crash report tables? Philip mentioned that would help support users when trying to guide them to pick reports that start with BP. So I can review this, but it sounds like I was asked to review the patch on Fabricator. Patch on Fabricator. But it sounds like there are a few outstanding questions to be answered. Comment 8. I also have a question. About crashes. The original about crashes listed the submitted date rather than the crashed date in the submitted crash report list. This has changed that. I just want to ensure that this was an intentional change. Since this was an intentional change. I don't have much skin in the game either way, but I want to make sure it was intentional and not a copy-paste error. The UX spec has changed that. A copy-paste error. All right. So need information from reporter, or from assignee, I'll say. And so let's take a look at the patch and see what's going on inside. Currently experiencing Bugzilla integration issues. New revisions may remain private until the issues are resolved. We should have a fix applied very soon. Okay, well, good. Here's what apparently things look like after the changes. Oh, there is a date submitted. Wait a second. Submitted crash reports. Date crashed. I guess I can never mind that last. I guess never mind this last part. Looking at the, well, I guess I better double check. I should download the raw diff and apply it, and make sure that make sure it behaves. Applying about crashes update. So I'll build faster that. And let's take a look at the build. There's my test image of a dude with a bird on his head, and we're gonna go to about crashes. So yeah, he's got dates submitted down there, so we can ignore that last. I guess never mind the last part. Looking at the patch, it looks like the table header has stayed with submitted, date submitted in this patch. That looks for submitted crash reports. All right. So let's dig into this patch. So the first thing he's done is change some CSS. I'm not gonna dig too much into that right away. I'm gonna start rather with any markup changes. Let's take a look at the HTML. So actually, let's take a look at the general set of changes he's done. Maybe we'll take a look at the list of files he's touched. You get sort of an overview of the stuff that's going on here. Is there a files list in Fabricator? A list? Just show me the list of files that changed. Yeah, here we go. So he's changed some CSS, he's changed some JavaScript and the markup, and then thankfully there are some tests that need updating, and then there is this file, which I'm guessing is the fluent strings that he's updating. Okay, so let's start with the markup. What's changing in the markup? So he's fixing some indentation, which is nice. And I think that's what this first part does, is really just changes some indentation. I guess that's what Fabricator's trying to tell me here. These lines were changed, but only these green areas changed. The rest of this didn't actually change. Knit, this should probably line up with the attributes above it. It's a style knit. That ref should probably be indented a couple of spaces. And then he adds a title, the crash report's title, in the header. I guess we had that before, but it was different. Okay, and he's loading crashes.js and L10N. Okay, great. And then in the body, we have our... Oh yeah, this old markup is crazy. We had like the closing head and an open body right after, and this is a little more sane. We got our body here. We have a reports list. And he's moved the button that clears all reports. Where is that button now? Clear all. Oh, it's right here. Clear unsubmitted reports. It's a wide button, and it's got the delete button label. That also has the delete button label. And let's see here. So he's got a report list. He's got a div of the unsubmitted reports first, and then the report list submitted. So he's got two things inside the report list. It's more like report lists, am I right? Maybe this should be report lists, since there are actually two lists in here. Maybe I'll put that inside Markdown, because I can do that. Report list unsubmitted, and then he's got like the title, then H2, and then he's got the button, the delete button, and then he's got a table in here, and the table has two headers, the ID and then the date crashed heading, and then he's got the table body unsubmitted, and that's it. And then we have a different table here of the submitted ones. And what is it? Flip the order of unsubmitted and submitted crash reports. Philip mentioned, so Philip was saying, what did he want? Put the submitted section on top of the page. Right, so that's, Philip is arguing that we should have this this order switched, but I don't know if we should do that. Maybe we should. So he's got a table title container, same thing as before. He's got his crashes submitted label, and then you've got your button to clear submitted reports, and then a very similar table, except you got the date submitted heading here, and then you've got your body, your submitted body, and then down here we've got two paragraphs that I think are if ID no config class hidden, no config label, no reports label, no submitted reports, no reports label. And who uses that? No submitted reports. Style display equals block, hide submitted reports list. Class hidden. Where is that hidden class? Hidden is display none. So you've already got, I've got maybe a suggestion for him here is maybe instead of, I gotta find the no reports. Down here, maybe this should, perhaps this should default to also having class equals hidden. And then we should toggle the class, that class, when calculating the submitted reports list. We seem to have a few ways of hiding and showing things in here. We've got this class equals hidden, and we've got some JS that's manually setting display none or display block. If possible, we should try to converge. Okay. So that makes sense. I think this markup is fine. So I'm going to say that we're going to collapse the file. And now let's take a look at some of the tests. So in this case, he's changing some lets to consts. Sure, const, make fake after. It's cloning it. Add some fake crashes. And then he opens about crashes. And then we're going to run content test spawn in there. Const doc is content doc and crash IDs get elements by class name, crash ID. Get elements by class name. Class list add, get ID cell. So that's when you add a thing. All right, get elements by class name. All right, that's fine. And then assert that we are listing the number, and then we assert that the ID is correct. That looks fine. About crashes resubmit. What are you talking about here? Check that the list of crashes displayed by about crashes match the list of crashes that we placed in the pending submitted directories. This function is run the child process via content test spawn. So this is running right in content test spawn. So we get the crash IDs and we assert that the crashes list, we get the right number of crashes and that the crash IDs all match. That's what that does. It's very similar to the previous one. And then here we get the browser for a tab, and then we define this function CSP on success. Get elements by class name, crash link. What? Crash link, what's crash link? Button as link, get submitted row. Button as link. That's this, I guess. Crash link. Yeah, that's a crash link. All right. And we're getting the second one. Click on a pending crash, wait for it to be submitted. Why 1? Why not 0? Is there a reason to pick one in particular? We should probably explain what the magic number is all about. Why are we clicking on that one? Crash submit succeeded. On success, then you go and click on the load. Got submission on load. Grab the crash ID to verify later. all that's the same. On CSP page show, when does that use? CSP page show. This is very complicated, this test. CSP page show. This doesn't use a NICPOW. We go back, and so we wait to go back. CSP on load. So the first thing we do is we add these event listeners, crash submit fail and crash submit succeed. Then we set up this thing that waits for about crashes to not be what's loaded. URL is not equal to about crashes. Okay. Then we go CSP on load then. And then CSP page show is also set up inside that. And then we'll go through a list of crashes. And if the crash is pending, submitted crash equals crash. And we break out. And then we take the ID, we get the element by ID, we find the submit button, we click it, and that should make one of these two happen. CSP success probably. CSP on success. Makes us load then the link. We click on the link. Get elements by, so we choose one here, crash link 1, and submit button 0. Crash link elements. Anyway, we got the submission on the load the crash report page, then we make sure that we have the right information in there, I guess, and then we clean up some stuff, and then we go back, and then on page show we make sure that the crash report link is still pointing to the right thing. Okay, it's very complicated. This is a very complicated test. So don't truncate. It's not really his fault though. It was always kind of complicated. So I'll allow it. Nice. Oh boy. All right, so that seems okay. And here in this test, check clear visible. Report list submitted. Get the compute style. Then it is visible. We check to see if a thing is visible. Okay. Fair enough. So that's just report list submitted. Check to see if it's visible. Okay. And then clearing the reports. I think that's the last test here. What does it do? We're going to click clear reports, so he gets the unsubmitted list, gets the submitted list, freak out if neither are found. And we're returning a promise here, I guess. We're going to get the style for the unsubmitted and submitted lists, and we'll make sure that they're both visible. And then we do this deferred thing. It's deferred. New promise. Oh, right. I see what you're doing. That's an old school way of doing that. And then that just the whole deferred. It's not a thing that he did. It's more of like an old pattern from this test is to extract the resolve and reject functions from something and make them properties of this thing called a deferred. Kind of turns a promise inside out. Hello, the real KCW. So what are we doing here? We create a mutation observer. Wait for both lists to be cleared. Oof. We tend to not put put one-liners on the same line like this. It should probably be for both lists to be cleared if unsubmitted style display is block or this one is block, then we return. And then we go through the mutations that we got, and if there's an attributes mutation and it's a style attribute change, then we just connect our observer and we make sure that both are hidden. Seems a bit strange why we'd wait there for that. Also, hang on, so I'm going to write that in here. Also, it seems a bit strange to check if either our display equals block and then bail out, and then ensure that, well, no, I guess it's not it's strange because they could be displayed as something else. So he wants to make sure that they're displaying none. That's probably okay then. So we're gonna observe both. This seems strange. He's got an observer observing both. This all can probably be simplified, however, by avoiding the mutation observer. Jedi Holocron asks, what are you working on? I'm reviewing some patches from someone who's changing how About Crashes works. About Crashes is this page inside Firefox that lists all of the crash reports that your browser has gathered. So that's what I'm working on. I'm reviewing a patch. This can all probably be simplified by avoiding the mutation observer and using browser test utils wait for condition. I think that's what's called, browser test utils wait for condition. Yeah. Like, deferred dot promise equals browser test utils here dot wait for condition unsubmitted style dot display equals none and submitted style dot display equals none. And then he clicks both. Click clear reports, clicks both. Yeah, this will resolve the first time a list is cleared and not wait for the second list to clear. Using the wait for condition promise will ensure that the promise does not resolve until both lists. Oh wait, is that true? No, that's not true, because he had that condition up here. If either of them are still around. Bonus points for getting rid of the deferred object altogether and altogether, and just returning the return value from browser test utils dot wait for condition. And that takes care of the tests, I think, and the markup. I'll keep the markup open for a little while. Let's take a look at the JavaScript now. There's quite a bit of it. It's got this global called report URL. That's been around for a while. We're going to define this crash submit module getter. And we're going to add an event listener for DOM content loaded, populate the report list, and then we add these event listeners. Click. All right. DOM content loaded. All right, that's probably okay. And then do nothing, otherwise report an error. The error, okay, fair enough. And then got rid of the submit pending report function. Please don't, please break this up over a few lines, like lang equals JS, report URL equals null. This goes for anywhere else you did. You added one-liners, I guess. So what he's doing here is he's testing the report URL. We're gonna ignore anything that's non-HTTP or HTTPS. Okay, fair enough. If there's no report URL, then we say that we're not configured properly. Report list. This is an example where we could use, I think it's CSS toggle web API, CSS class list, add, remove, toggle. If only one argument return toggle class value. If class is, then remove it. Return false. If not, add and return true. Toggle. Use class list toggle. With the hidden class you already have. See such and such. This is not an example. This is a place. Otherwise, we go get the reports, and then we format the times. And then for each report, if it's pending, we'll create a new unsubmitted row. And we'll get the element by ID. And we'll append the row. Then we'll show the appropriate sections. So if we'll get the element ID submitted, child element count equals 0, and then we hide the unsubmitted report list. Otherwise, we make it display block, hide unsubmitted. It's kind of strange that it's a little strange to have some one-liner helper methods to hide, to have a it's a bit, I'm not sure it's worth having the one-liner helper method to hide the unsubmitted reports list. But if we do go that route, we should probably be consistent and have a second method, a second helper function to show it. And both of these should probably use that hidden class and toggle. If the number of submitted elements is 0, then we're going to hide the submitted reports list. Otherwise, we're going to, I guess, same goes for below. We're going to get the report list, the submitted report list, and we're going to show it. And we're going to hide the no submitted reports element. And then here are those helper functions. And then these create the rows, I guess. Get unsubmitted row. So we're going to create a table row. We're going to append an ID cell. An ID cell. Okay. We're going to get a date cell. That's cool. And then we're going to create a button. Submit button. Basically creating these things. I wonder if we should use a template here instead. HTML template, the template tag, content. ID cell. and then like template. As an alternative to manually creating these each time, you could also use an HTML template for each row type. See such and such. Using the appropriate, using attributes or classes in the template, you can then query into the nodes and the cloned, into the children of the cloned template to populate it with the appropriate information. A suggestion. The advantage of this is to make it easier to see and reason about the structure of each table row. It's not a huge deal, but it might simplify some of the JS here somewhat. And perhaps get rid of some redundancy. Get rid of some redundancy. The setting of classes and the creation of elements should go away, for example. So it's an on-click event handler here. I think it's a small thing. I think we tend to use the add event listener idiom rather than the on foo on such and such method when attaching event listeners. Same suggestions as above. Read template tag. Oh, and it would also get rid of some of the helper functions. So I'll get rid of some of the shared helper functions. Get ID cell, get date cell. Because you can just like have those in the template and then you just query into them. And then submit pending report, button class list at submitting. We make the button text style visibility is hidden. Unsubmitted, and get the submitted row. It's using the current date for submitted. Is that what we used to do? So like we get this remote crash ID from crash submit. But when we're getting an unsubmitted, getting submitted row, the ID, get date cell, the date, get submitted row, report.date, we get a report. It's a small thing, but we might be lying a bit here about the submitted time, since the time we get on the report might not match the time, the new date that we calculate right now. Do we have a reference to the report still? Can we get at the report that we just submitted and get the submission date that way? Date formatter. Then we add it, we show appropriate sections, and dispatch event crash submit succeeded. Crash submit failed. Clear all reports. Clear submitted reports. Submitted dir, pending dir, okay. Clean up folder. Wait, clear old reports. Cleanup folder is going to iterate the directory. Each one we're going to remove if not filter or await filter entry. Not filter, or we pass the filter and we remove the file. Oof, okay, dispatch event. That's what that does. Typo, message. And then what does clear old reports do? 1 year ago, clean up folder. Date now minus that amount. Clean up folder is crash reports path. If entry starts the install time. Probability. What date was entry? When last write date? If not date. folder, and then that's the function. Okay, that's the filter. Okay. Can you please add documentation for each of the functions in this file? All right. So I'm gonna review this, or I'm gonna finish this review here. Request changes. Hi, what's this assignee's name? Hi, Alexis Deschamps. Thanks for the patch. Always thank your. What are your code fortes? Just curious. I work on the web browser. I work on the Firefox web browser. That's my forte. Jedi Holocron. Hi, Alex Deschamps. Thanks for the patch. Always thank your submitter for the patch. I have a number of minor hang on, I'm going to also say, I think visually this is quite an improvement. Thanks for that. Over what has historically an underloved and underserved part of our UI. So thanks. I have a number of minor technical issues and suggestions. I know the code you were starting with wasn't too clean to begin with, but I'm hoping we can leave this all with the code in a better state than we started. See below for my suggestions. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks. Changes requested. Okay, so I think I'm going to stop the episode here. Hey, thank you so much for watching episode 146 of The Joy of Coding. We got there. We did it. We reviewed some stuff. We didn't actually work on any patches, but we reviewed some stuff, and I think that's useful. Let's see. Same thing next week. I'm going to be hacking on Firefox stuff. Hopefully, I'll actually write some patches as opposed to reviewing, but you never know. Reviewing is useful. So with that having been said, have yourself a great week, and I will see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.
The joy of coding.
See ya.